Oke, selamat datang di si paling CX Podcast. Hari ini kita ada spesial karena apa? Today is very special because we have a guest from CXSA. There is a Hassan and Charles. Welcome in our podcast. But before we start, I have some context, and then we want to introduce all of you. Who are you, and what is CXSA? But for the context is, if we're talking about customer experience, right? It's not talking about service standard, right? It's not talking about customer satisfaction score, EI, contact center. But in high level, CX is one of the strategies that business needed today and can help to grow the business as well. So that's why in CX, means there is a three things that I think is very important. Yeah. First is revenue generation. Revenue generator. And the second one is cost efficiency and operational effectiveness. The third one is exceed the loyalty. Because CX not in the level of the operational, but the level of the strategy of the organization, right? And then customer experience is not the only one if you want to grow the business. It should have to elaborate with other strategies like financial management, right? Product development, right? And I mean something like channel expansion and other strategy that elaborate with customer experience. And the most important is how we can create the culture for the customer experience. So we were talking about that today. And the second one is the collaboration. We want to do a workshop between CX.ID and CXSA. So the first, before we start further, I want to introduce Charles and Hassan. Who is Charles? Who is Hassan? And what is CXSA? Please.
Hi, I'm Charles Bennett, CXSA. I've had a let me very quickly introduce CXSA. So we're a specialist training institute and advisory consulting company. Everything is driven from the training. So we're based out of Dubai. We've got offices in Riyadh. We've had the pleasure of doing this thing called customer experience, and it's more exciting Big Brother customer centricity in 40 countries around the world, and we've had the opportunity to be working with some of the biggest brands, whether it's being in the States or in Europe. And now we see the real opportunity, or the areas of the world where we can see customer experience growing the fastest in Asia. Honestly, to see it be in Asia, and that's one of the reasons why we're so excited.
Yes, thank you. We want to welcome you to Indonesia.
Thank you.
Yeah. How about you, Hassan?
Yeah, I'll just echo what Charles has said. Let's talk a little bit about ourselves. We're both very passionate about helping to build capability within people, with especially focused on customer experience. But it's not just customer experience or complaint management or for just measuring feedback survey. It's customer experience, help your organization grow and differentiate yourself from your competition. That's where we see the biggest gap in today's age. People aren't looking so much.
Thank you for the introduction from Charles and Hassan. I have a question. I think this is very important for we start this conversation, right? There is any insight from global sex trend or the main means like the main trend between the organization and customer experience and business general. So,
There are some definite trends going on. There's more money so the amount of money that is being invested in customer experience, more and more organisations in pretty well any big business country says we know customer experience is important. The level of money is now going up, it's in the billions, and a lot of money is being invested. Sadly, in a lot of countries in the world, customer service is in decline.
Yep.
And customer experience in a lot of countries is either stable, not moving up, or also slightly in decline. In other words, it's also pointing, despite all the investment, we're not necessarily focusing enough on the right things.
If you look at trends, there is definitely customer experience becoming a trendy thing, or more of a buzzword. When you look at organizations that have done really well in the world, take the example of Apple or in Indonesia, Gojek, Uber, and other places. These organizations didn't start by doing like surveys or setting up a CX department. That's something much more centralized. It was focused on how to understand people, their needs, behaviors, their motivations at a very deep level. And that's what we're really missing in customer experience. Unfortunately, we're focused on the numbers, not focused on
The point is, if we're talking about customer experience, it should have to customer first, right? Sometimes in Indonesia today, there is a lot of organization changing floors from customer service division into customer experience division, but have a some job desk as a customer service. So I mean, we're talking about CX as a culture, customer service culture. It's not as easy as just changing the name. So what the most important before changing the name? Yeah, I mean, it's like leadership or
But it's about how you take the concept of customer. I use the word concept quite vaguely into the centre of everything an organisation does. You see, the challenge, you go to the conferences pretty well in any part of the world, and you start to look at the trends, and people talk about the trends as personalisation. Personalisation is a feature of data, and data is the use of technology to evaluate. So that's a technology-driven thing. There's going to be very much more, we need more insight, and that's a technology-driven play. We're now moving into the world of AI, where AI now is being talked about as bridging the gap between traditional customer experience and where it could be. That is a technology-driven play. My concern is that the focus on the trends is actually on the people who are sponsoring the trend analysis. A lot of people behind the trend analysis are the technology companies. So you're seeing technology trends. What you're not really seeing are the real trends about what is happening and what is driving of the fact that customer experience is static, potentially in slight decline, and customer service in a lot of countries, not every country, is in definite decline. So we need to be starting to thinking about, is the insight we're getting the right insight? I would argue it's not. Is the focus on the technology to the degree a lot of organisations is that important? Yes. But is it too much focus? Is it you're skewing the focus on technology-driven insight and neglecting the human components? I would argue that's the case. It's not saying that things they're doing aren't important, because there's too many other aspects of customer centricity. And part of that is lack of understanding, which is currently being missed in a lot of places in the world. And I'm talking about pretty well every country. Every country.
it means that first is the point that I get from Hassan is leadership is very important. And then the second one is some cycling with two leader to middle to expert. It means in every division it has some CX language is very important. So do you have any tips or means like recommendation for the organization if you want to create CX as revenue generator?
Well, to put CX as a strategic differentiator and revenue, it's quite a big, it's quite a big question to unpack. Obviously, you need to start by looking at your organization. What are your key strengths? And a great way to start, or a quick way to start, is looking at your journeys. So you analyze and assess what is your current state customer journeys look like. Where are the areas where you can optimize, but also enrich the journeys and add value and differentiate yourself from competition? That's a great place to start. But this is assuming you've got things like leadership support, you've got right kind of culture and support in general in place. So that's also needs to go hand in hand, culture as well as the journeys. And you also at the same time try and develop an insights program as your.
But why journeys first? That's an important point. I totally agree with you, but why journeys first? Because we could start at insight, we could start at strategy. A lot of people say start strategy. We could go culture, we could go voice, we can go a lot of different places. I agree with you, but why?
That's a very good question. So, if you were to start with strategy, let's say, it's a logical place to start. But you and I know, we all know that to build a strategy and roll it out, it takes a very long time. It takes 3 to 6 months minimum it would take to build that out. And we can't wait for that long. Seniors, especially senior stakeholders, need to see results. And journeys are much quicker to create, to roll out, to assess, and to take action on. Much quicker than a big CX strategy. So you can get journeys within a month, 2 months, to start acting.
Can I do a yes and
Yes.
on this? There is a yes and. So the yes and says, Hassan is absolutely right. You can do things. So journey-centric change is much faster than initiative-centric change. That's point number one. But the journeys are where your DNA, the customer centricity, lies. If you get your journeys right, it actually defines what your customers buy, when they buy, how much, when they come back, what they tell the world. And so suddenly your journeys become really important. And strategists don't look at journey enough. They think in a context, I have these products, I have these services with these attributes, and if I improve some of these products by extra features, extra functions, I will then say I can then create a prediction on how much I'm going to sell. And that sounds fine until you realise that 90% of business strategies do not generate the predictions they put on paper. So if it's not generated, it means they're doing something wrong. That means looking at feature function based around product is not a great way to predict what you're going to go and sell. And if you know that your journeys are going to be your predictor of value, because you can define that value inside the journey, you can define the emotions you're looking to create, you can define the outcomes, then you've got the DNA of an organisation is that journey. So the yes and is understanding about why the journeys are so valuable, adding on the journey-centric change, which Hassan very, very well articulated, can be very agile and very quick. That is a great place to start, but that's not saying you want to do everything in stepwise fashion. You need to be starting to be thinking to be doing other things in parallel. That's almost the next question is, do you go strategy next? Do you go insight next? Do you do culture next? Do you do maturity next? Because you have a number of choices.
Absolutely. Again, it depends on where the organization is, who are your biggest supporters, and how can you accelerate the whole process of reaching towards your customer central objectives.
So customer journey mapping at the first, you can find or discover something like pain point and gain point, and which touch point you can generate more business.
Can I jump in on customer journey mapping just for a second?
Yeah.
Because here's the thing about customer journey mapping. If customer journeys, as they really happening, are the DNA of the organisation, because it defines the value, don't the organisations owe it to themselves to actually be investing in the best possible thinking to be able to deliver those journeys? So I ask the question, not to us as a group, but generally, why is everybody doing journey mapping almost exactly the same way? We have the basic layers. We basically have pain points. We have opportunity points. We have solution points. And we have 4 or 5 different layers. And we think about it very much the same way. If we're able to innovate at a journey level, to be able to add value to those journeys, relating to better outcomes, better experience, better ease, and better connection, that's going to be worth more to companies. So why don't we start rigorously asking those questions?
Okay, thank you, Thomas. I have a follow-up question to Hassan. Maybe you can share the global best practice use cases. If we want to start CX culture in our organization, how we can start that? When maybe?
It's a very good question. How it's about culture is about how do you build belief in people, how do you build a movement, how do you inspire people to go the extra mile. And it's easy. Well, people usually start by saying, "Oh, let's do some workshops, let's train our people." Training is part of the whole framework of building culture, but much before that comes leadership. Leadership need to demonstrate that they really are committed to this, and they need to set the tone. make this work. So they need to have you need to have commitment by leadership, and then leadership needs to be inspiring, helping create a vision around this before you start going into things like training. You need to hire people with the right attitude and behaviors. But really important segue into this is something called the law of diffusion and innovation. Whenever you introduce something new, or if you're trying to build a culture or customer obsession, how do you do it? Because you have a lot of resistance within the organization if you just throw it out initially. How do you have your initial early majority or early adopters that can help you spread the word and make moves within the organization? So one of the core aspects of this is invite people to be part of the movement. See and look for people who nominate themselves to volunteer to be part of this. They will help you create that initial early movement within the organization. Identify those people, and then you train them and motivate them to create that bigger movement.
Yeah. Agree. I totally agree about that. Sometimes maybe in this case in Indonesia, there's a gap. If we share vision from the top leader to, to executor staff or middle management, the biggest things that the biggest gap in this organization is the middle management. I mean, they gap about knowledge about CX concept, CX. The fundamental of customer experience. So top management and middle management have different CX language. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's about what customer centricity actually means to an organization. And here's the challenge. Nobody will ever say the customer is not important. Everybody will say the customer is important. The dependency is about what you then go and do with it. So that in a lot of organisations, they say, "Oh, we'll set up a department." So set up a department, put a customer experience head. They'll basically say, "Go and recruit 2 or 3 people," and they're going to say, "Where are we going to get this person to report?" So often as not, they'll put him in operations, they'll put him in marketing. Sometimes they'll put him in some form of service delivery. Not the best places in any case, and it says, "Right, go off and start to go and build." And in many cases, they ask the question, say, "Great, I've got a department, I've got 2 or 3 people, what do I do first?" And they know they need to build a strategy, they know they need to build a culture. But where most people still, the majority, certainly 60, 70% start, is saying, "We need to get insight." And insight says, "I'll go and talk to to organisations, and I'll create a voice of customer platform. And I will go and get creative survey-driven insights, which will either be the bottom-up, so you'll hear like CSAT, customer satisfaction, or the top-down, which I call NPS. And then they may ask another question, say, give us a measure on your NPS, your CSAT. They may ask why. And then they will go away and create initiatives on the back of that. And then they find out those initiatives have to sell because they're reporting into operations and have to try and sell those initiatives on exactly the same level as everybody else is going to sell it. Now the challenge is if you do this thing called customer experience well, you have impact on your revenue, your cost, and your service simultaneously. The biggest challenge today is building a revenue generating business. So if I'm saying I'm going to have an initiative, which means I'm going to achieve superior outcome, A, B, and C, superior experience, A, B, and C, my ease goes from this to this, and I'm going to connect better. How do I go and create a revenue-generated business case? Because if I can take customer centricity from a cost center to a profit center. But nobody's allowing it at the moment to be off the basis. And the reason is because we're not very good at generating that revenue business case. So that's one of the things we've got to go and solve. Because if we don't, we're going to be fighting on selling all those initiatives on exactly the same level as the ops people, the marketing people, the sales people. And it means we get a few of the things through, but not very many. What happens to our customer experience progress? It's painfully slow. If the world changes outside more quickly than our ability to change inside, we underperform, but worse still. And that's the basis.
Yeah, that's very insightful answer things from Hassan and Charles, right? So customer journey mapping is very important. It's something like maps, navigator to our business, and we can can find or discover anything uh, from the goals of our business as well. Okay. Talking about the collaboration, the last question. Unfortunately, this is the last question. Maybe we can have a more longer podcast next time. But the interesting is collaboration between CXSA and CX.ID.
Yes.
Yes, you can explain about the things that we collaborate, especially for our workshop, right?
A collaboration on the workshop, I think, is first and foremost. So I'm really looking forward to Tuesday. And there we'll start to get into some of the fundamentals, but we're also going to get into some of the very vital strategic points. So we're going to have a group of people. I want to talk to the people who are in the senior management positions, to not to think that the best way to approach customer experience is to get basic insight, basic journeys, and create initiatives. It's so slow. That's about 15% of where they need to be. But to also define the thinking patterns of what I would call the top 5% of organisations, so that they can start to put in place plans equipped with that knowledge. At the same token, there's going to be plenty of people who are at different levels of the organisation where their knowledge is going to be less. So the training we're going to go is the beginning steps, what we call from 0 all the way up. So we have 5 levels of certification. We have essential, well, actually 6. Essentials, which is what we're covering, which is a part of the foundation. So the foundation is 1 to 2 days. Then we get into practitioner, where we get into the more advanced approaches into journey mapping. And then the advanced approaches of journey mapping start putting in place optimize and experience-aligned journeys. Optimize is we've taken out the dumb stuff, the stuff that doesn't contribute, the cost and the complexity. The customer alignment basically goes from voice of customer into qual, into design-driven thinking, and we design journeys which are much richer in terms of outcome. How do we align it back into organisations? So then we basically say, how do we build business case for now into the master? How do we create technology alignment? How do we use CX adaptive balanced scorecards to measure the right things, but not just from one perspective, from internal, the customer and learning, and there was 4 different perspectives. And then about how to also drive change programs, which are different from the traditional initiative central change programs, which tend to be costly, fat and expensive. And then we move into the later ones, which is basically takes us to leader, which is all around the soft skill. We call them power skill. The ability to sell ideas, influence ideas, story tell, all those components to take a newly appointed head and give them those power skills. So that would be a learning journey. But the reality is, part of in terms of what we can do is collaborate at a not-for-profit level. So the work we're doing with the main CX Council and all the learning and all the thought leadership, genuine thought leadership, not marketing thought leadership, but genuine thought leadership we have the ability to see. But also create a framework, not for customer experience, but customer-centered businesses, for Indonesia. If we get that right, it means Indonesia, the CX in Indonesia can accelerate more quickly than the other surrounding regions. Yeah. And that's got to be something to be working on.
We can wait about that. And thank you for the good. Fun fact, for the registration in our member group, less than 1 hour. The room is full. The registration of the participants. So it's very exciting for our member as well. So maybe Hassan, there is some additional value or benefit for our collaboration and maybe for further collaboration after this.
We're going to talk about something. So we talk a lot about customer experience for differentiation and innovation, and that means that we need to be able to build thinking patterns which allow us to think creatively and differently. And number one of the first rules in innovation is to be able to look over patterns, which is why we're very passionate about cross-cultural collaboration, and which is why we're here in Indonesia. Just by traveling and experiencing other places, it opens up the mind. We need to surround ourselves with environments and places which help us to nurture creativity and innovation, which is why it's really important for us to do this cross-collaborative, cross-cultural collaboration, enhance the program. So we are very excited. We're going to be sharing with you how to go from best practice, your starting point, towards next practice, and how to make CX your strategic game changer. These are big words, but we do encourage you to come participate and experience what it feels like to be part of this program. That's something to do.
Thank you, thank you. Thank you for this collaboration. Very appreciated. And thank you for your time.
Pleasure.
Yeah, for this podcast as well. Can't wait to see you to share with our community in the next episode. Yeah.
We're so looking forward to it. Thank you for inviting us.
And a huge thanks to Januar, Vika, and Amber for in front of the scene and behind the scenes as well, for helping to really build this tool. Yes. And
Little baby.
yes, and
Bina.
and Bennatt, yes, and Bennatt especially helping for this.
Okay. Thank you for the time. Enjoy Jakarta as well. After this, we will try to dinner in Masih, right? Thank you for watching si paling cek. Sampai ketemu lagi di podcast kita berikutnya, teman-teman. Thank you.